For 3 years, her house in Florida had been filled with silence. The laughter that once echoed through the rooms was now only a memory, and the walls seemed to breathe with emptiness. She woke each day with routine but without purpose, watching the same sunrise, feeling the same hollow ache. Her neighbors carried on with their lives, and she felt invisible in the flow of time. Grief had softened but left behind a heavy solitude. She often wondered if this was all life had left for her. At 55, she felt both too young to give up and too old to start over. Memories of her late husband were bittersweet, wrapped in both gratitude and sadness. She kept his favorite chair by the window, untouched, as though he might return. But deep inside, she knew that holding on to the past was chaining her to sorrow. Her mornings stretched endlessly, filled with coffee, television, and the quiet hum of appliances. Sometimes she drove aimlessly through town, searching for something that might spark joy again. Yet every attempt ended with the same emptiness. It was not just loneliness, it was a feeling of being lost. She missed not only her husband but also herself. Hope felt distant, like a language she no longer understood. Friends had suggested new hobbies, but she brushed them off with a tired smile. Maybe one day, she would say, though she never meant it. She was alive, but not really living. She carried her grief like a heavy coat, even in the warmth of Florida's sun. And yet, somewhere in the depths of her heart, a quiet whisper remained. It told her that life was not finished with her. She could not see the path ahead, but she could sense that something was waiting. She just didn't know what. That whisper of hope, though faint, was enough to keep her standing. On one ordinary afternoon, as she flipped through a local paper at the cafe, something unusual caught her eye. An advertisement for Latin dance classes promised energy, fun, and connection. She read the words twice, then 3 times. A small smile tugged at her lips. It seemed almost absurd, but as she folded the paper and tucked it into her bag, she felt her heartbeat quicken. For the first time in years, she felt a pull toward something unknown, and with it came the first spark of courage. The ad for Latin dance classes stayed on her mind all night. She placed the paper on her bedside table, unable to throw it away. Each time she glanced at it, she felt both curiosity and fear. Could she really walk into a dance studio at her age? Would people laugh at her clumsy steps? Doubts swirled, but so did a new excitement she hadn't felt in years. The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror, holding the paper like it carried a secret message. She thought of her late husband and how he used to encourage her to try new things. "Don't let fear stop you," he would always say. Remembering those words brought tears, but also strength. Maybe this was the sign she needed. She dialed the number on the ad, her hand trembling slightly. A warm voice answered, explaining class times and assuring her that beginners were welcome. "Everyone starts somewhere," the woman said. Those words lingered in her heart, softening her fear. She hung up with a nervous laugh, realizing she had just taken her first step. That as the week passed, she prepared in small ways. She bought a pair of comfortable shoes and a simple dress that made her feel light. She practiced moving to music alone in her living room, clumsy yet free. Each attempt filled her with both embarrassment and a strange joy. She was awakening parts of herself she thought had been lost forever. On the evening of her first class, she hesitated at the door, gripping her bag tightly. The sounds of lively music spilled from inside, mingling with laughter and chatter. Her heart pounded, urging her to turn back. But another voice inside whispered, "Step forward." She pushed the door open, greeted by the warmth of smiles and the rhythm of music. People of all ages and backgrounds moved across the floor with energy and grace. She took a deep breath, realizing she had crossed a threshold into something new. The journey had begun, and though she did not know where it would lead, she felt alive again. The studio buzzed with energy, filled with the sounds of clapping and laughter. She stood at the edge of the room, her hands clenched nervously. The music was unfamiliar, pulsing with rhythm and passion. She wondered if she could ever belong in this space. Still, she forced herself to step closer to the group. Heart racing, the instructor, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and an easy smile, welcomed her warmly. "Benvenida," he said with a light accent. His tone carried no judgment, only encouragement. He showed her simple steps, guiding her feet with patience. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. At first, her movements were stiff and awkward. She stumbled often, apologizing with nervous laughter. The others reassured her with gentle words, reminding her that everyone had once been a beginner. Their kindness wrapped around her like a protective embrace. She realized she was not alone in her struggle. As the music played, something inside her began to shift. Each step, though imperfect, connected her to the beat. Her body resisted at first, but little by little, it started to remember joy. The rhythm seeped into her, loosening the chains of grief. She felt a spark of freedom, something she hadn't felt in years. By the end of the class, sweat dampened her forehead, but her heart was lighter. She laughed, truly laughed, when she accidentally spun in the wrong direction. The room filled with shared joy, and for the first time, she felt part of a community. That as she walked out of the studio, the night air felt different, the sky seemed brighter, and her steps were lighter. She whispered to herself, "I can do this." It was more than just dance, it was the first step into a new life. The journey was only beginning, and she sensed it would take her places she had never imagined. The following weeks tested her patience and resilience. Each class brought both triumphs and stumbles, and the mirror reflected her struggles. She often compared herself to the younger, more graceful dancers. The voice of doubt returned, whispering that she didn't belong. She wondered if she was chasing something impossible at her age. One evening, she nearly skipped class, discouraged by her mistakes. But as she sat on her couch, the shoes by the door seemed to call her. She remembered the silence of her home before dance entered her life. That memory was heavier than her fear. With a deep breath, she grabbed her bag and went. In class, she stumbled through the steps, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Yet every time she faltered, the instructor reminded her, "Courage is not perfection, it is persistence." His words struck her hard. She realized that her journey was not about flawless movement but about showing up despite fear. Over time, her body began to adapt. The steps that once felt impossible slowly became familiar. She celebrated small victories: a turn completed, a rhythm caught, a smile shared. Each success whispered of resilience, proof that she was stronger than she believed. Her classmates cheered her progress, lifting her spirits higher. They laughed together when mistakes happened, making every misstep feel less like failure and more like learning. The room was filled with energy, and she began to look forward to every class. Walking home under the Florida moonlight, she felt something stir inside her. It was hope, growing stronger with each dance. She was no longer the woman trapped in silence. She was becoming someone new, and deep down, she sensed that this was only the beginning of her transformation. As weeks turned into months, the dance studio became her second home. The women she once saw as strangers now felt like sisters. They spoke of their families, their journeys as immigrants, and their struggles to build lives in a new country. She listened intently, moved by their courage and resilience. They welcomed her into their circle with open arms. They taught her words in Spanish, laughed at her mispronunciations, and shared food from their homelands. In their warmth, she found something she had missed for years: a sense of belonging. The loneliness that had once consumed her began to fade. Together, they celebrated birthdays, holidays, and small victories on the dance floor. Each gathering was filled with music, laughter, and stories that stitched their lives together. She realized that friendship was a dance of its own, an exchange of trust, joy, and vulnerability. The bonds they built went beyond the studio walls. They called her when she missed class, checked on her when she was sick, and invited her to family gatherings. For the first time since becoming a widow, she felt part of a family again. These friendships reminded her that healing did not come from isolation but from connection. Every shared story, every shared laugh was a step toward reclaiming life. She was learning that resilience was not just about standing alone but also about leaning on others. And as her circle of friends grew stronger, so did her courage to face the unknown. A new chapter was waiting, and she was ready to step into it with hope. Among the lively energy of the studio, her eyes often drifted toward the instructor. He was a man of quiet strength, his movements graceful and confident. His laughter carried warmth, and his patience made everyone feel at ease. He was not just teaching steps, he was teaching life. At first, she dismissed the flutter she felt when he smiled at her. She told herself it was nothing, just admiration for his talent. But with each class, she noticed how her heart quickened when he approached. His encouragement felt different, as though his words carried a personal meaning. He began to share more of himself during conversations between dances. He spoke of his family, his journey from Latin America, and the challenges he faced adapting to a new culture. She admired his resilience, recognizing the strength it took to rebuild life far from home. There was a gentleness in the way he corrected her steps, never making her feel small. Instead, he celebrated her progress, no matter how small. His kindness touched her deeply, stirring emotions she had buried for years. She began to wonder if life was offering her not just friendship, but something more. One evening, as they practiced the slow dance, their eyes met and held for a moment longer than usual. The music faded in the background as she felt a spark she thought was lost forever. It was both frightening and exhilarating. She left the studio that night with her heart racing, replaying the moment over and over. Could it be possible, after so much loss, to feel this way again? She didn't have the answer yet, but she knew something within her had awakened. The dance was no longer just about steps, it was about rediscovering love. She arrived early, eager to practice the new sequence. The mirrors showed a woman learning to trust her body again. Each turn felt steadier, each pause more confident and calm. The instructor noticed and offered a smile that warmed the room. Her heart answered with quiet hope. During a partner exercise, their hands met and held a second longer. She felt surprise, then a gentle wave of courage. A memory of her husband surfaced, asking for space to be honored, not replaced. She breathed deeply and chose gratitude for the past. Then she chose resilience for the present. Friends teased her kindly, sensing a light around her. They reminded her that new beginnings are not betrayals, but blessings. She listened, uncertain yet willing to learn. The music wrapped her in kindness and possibility. She started to dance with purpose. Still, fear returned when the class grew difficult. A complicated pattern tangled her steps and thoughts. She wanted to hide, but the instructor guided her patiently. She learned to break the move into small pieces. Progress came one careful beat at a time. By the end of class, she felt transformed again. The rhythm seemed to live in her breath and bones. She understood that life transformation happens in tiny choices. She thanked the instructor with steady eyes and a soft voice. He invited her to a weekend social. She hesitated at the door, the old doubts whispering again. Was she ready for a bigger crowd and brighter lights? She pressed a hand to her chest and felt a steady rhythm. Courage answered, clear and simple and kind. She said yes to the invitation. As she walked to her car, the night air sparkled. The future no longer looked like a blank wall. It looked like a dance floor full of gentle chances. She promised to meet fear with faith and practice. The weekend was coming quickly. All week, the social lingered in her mind. She chose a dress that moved easily and felt light. Still, a flicker of worry hovered over every thought. What if she forgot the steps in front of everyone? What if hope asked too much of her? On Friday afternoon, she almost canceled. The habit of retreating felt familiar and safe. She held her phone, ready to invent an excuse. But a message from a friend arrived with timing and grace. "We'll be with you," it said simply. She arrived at the studio early and sat quietly. The music tested the speakers in soft waves. She practiced the basic steps in small circles. Her feet remembered what her heart feared to forget. Resilience quickened her breath. When the doors opened, laughter filled the space. People hugged, took photos, and shared stories. The instructor welcomed her with a kind nod. His presence steadied the room and steadied her. She felt less alone and more able. The first song started and nerves tightened. She missed a cue and stepped off time. A flush rose to her cheeks like sunrise. He leaned closer and whispered, "Breathe, then begin." She began again and found the beat. Song by song, her confidence returned. She focused on one move, one turn, one pause. Little wins stacked like soft bricks of courage. The crowd faded and the music led her forward. The night opened like a gentle door. As the final song ended, cheers rose around her. She laughed, surprised by her own joy. Hope felt solid, like ground beneath her feet. The instructor mentioned a cultural night next month. Her heart fluttered at the promise. The cultural night arrived with bright colors and smiles. Flags draped the walls, and tables offered warm foods. She listened to Spanish and Portuguese mixing like music. The room pulsed with belonging and shared roots. She felt honored to be invited. She danced with friends, then rested and watched. Performers spun with precision and playful grace. The instructor led a group routine that moved like water. She admired how he made space for everyone. Kindness seemed to guide his steps. When he asked her to dance, her pulse quickened. The floor felt bigger than before, and brighter too. She stumbled early and almost lost her courage. He softened the tempo and gave a reassuring nod. She breathed and found the rhythm again. As they moved, audience chatter softened to a hush. She felt the music lift her like a tide. Each turn stitched her to the present moment. Each pause honored memories with gentle respect. She sensed a new beginning forming. After the set, they shared a quiet corner. He spoke about heritage and family gatherings back home. He told her the group planned a trip to Brazil. He said she was welcome to join if she wished. The invitation felt like sunlight on her skin. Doubt and wonder wrestled inside her. Travel felt bold, complicated, and expensive. Yet purpose nudged her toward yes and trust. Her friends offered tips and promised support. Courage began to sound like her own voice. Before leaving, she stood by the open door. The night breeze carried laughter and soft music. She pictured beaches, markets, and warm welcomes. She pictured herself dancing under another sky. The decision waited for morning. She woke with clarity and a little fear. The decision grew roots while she slept. She called the studio and asked about dates. She checked her passport and saw it was near expiry. A new task list almost scared her away. Instead of retreating, she wrote each step down. Renew the passport, research tickets, and budget carefully. Ask a friend to help compare prices online. Request time off from volunteer commitments at home. Every line on the list felt like progress. The instructor shared a travel guide and a smile. He explained the group itinerary and family visits. He made room for rest and simple joy. His thoughtful planning eased her worries and doubt. Hope had practical shoes now. There were still challenges in the process. She waited on hold, filled forms, and double-checked dates. A minor error forced her to repeat a step. She sighed, then tried again with patience. Resilience kept the door open. Her friends surprised her with small kindnesses. One offered a suitcase, and another shared travel tips. Someone found a discount code that saved real money. Community turned obstacles into stepping stones. Gratitude filled her like bright water. At last, the pieces clicked into place. Confirmation emails arrived like gentle bells of promise. She printed everything and placed it in a folder. The trip shifted from dream to plan to reality. Purpose steadied every heartbeat. That night, she placed the folder by the door. She imagined airports, new words, and new colors. She imagined the moment the plane touched down. A tender excitement glowed inside her chest. Tomorrow would be preparation. Soon would be flight. The plane descended through clouds like brushed silk. She pressed her forehead to the window and exhaled. City lights spread like constellations on earth. The moment felt both unreal and deeply right. She smiled at the sense of new beginnings. At the airport, sounds layered in bright rhythms. Language flowed around her in gentle currents. She caught familiar words and missed others completely. The group gathered near a sign with happy waves. The instructor's voice steadied her again. They drove through streets alive with color. Murals told stories of hope and resilience. Markets spilled fruit, music, and friendly greetings. She marveled at how joy could be so visible. Life transformation seemed to dance in the air. Later, at the hotel, she sat by the window. She listened to distant music and city hum. She thought about the courage that brought her here. Gratitude warmed her like a soft blanket. She felt safe, curious, and wide awake. The next day began with simple steps. The group shared breakfast and planned their route. A local guide taught phrases for daily kindness. She repeated the words until they felt natural. Her smile did the rest of the talking. In the evening, they found music in a plaza. Couples swayed beneath strings of glowing lights. Friends laughed and clapped to the beat. She joined slowly. Then, with growing ease, the instructor's nod carried encouragement and grace. Walking back, the night breeze felt tender. She held the day close like a small treasure. Tomorrow, they would visit his family home. The thought fluttered with both joy and nerves. She hoped to belong in that moment. They traveled to his family's neighborhood by noon. The streets held stories in colors and voices. Children ran past with kites and bright smiles. A doorway opened and warmth rushed out. She felt welcome before words were spoken. His relatives embraced the group with kindness. Hands offered food, stories, and soft laughter. She met an aunt who loved old songs. An uncle remembered first dances from decades past. History felt present at the crowded table. They cooked together in a fragrant kitchen. She chopped herbs and learned a new spice. Laughter rose when she said a word wrong. Patience met her with gentle corrections and cheers. She felt part of a living tapestry. After lunch, music began in the courtyard. The instructor asked if she wished to dance. She nodded and trusted her practiced steps. Their movement felt like conversation without nerves. The family clapped in happy rhythm. Later, he shared stories about his childhood. She listened and saw the man behind the teacher. Resilience had shaped his calm and patience. Hope had guided him across distances and years. She admired him with a quiet heart. Evening softened the sky into rose and gold. She helped fold chairs and wash dishes. Simple tasks woven with purpose brought peace. belonging grew from small acts and open hands. She carried that truth like a candle. Before they left, his aunt pressed a gift into her palm. It was a small charm for courage and joy. She promised to keep it near her heart. The instructor's smile matched the evening light. Tomorrow held more places to discover. They visited the sea at sunrise the next day. Waves whispered steady lessons about time and change. She closed her eyes and breathed in quietly. Memories of her husband surfaced like gentle foam. Love asked to be honored, not to be a wall. She walked the shoreline and practiced forgiveness, not for the past, but for her own delay. She forgave the long years of hiding from joy. She forgave the fear that kept her small. Peace settled in with calm authority. The instructor joined her with quiet steps. They spoke of courage and kindness and purpose. He thanked her for trusting the journey. She thanked him for steady guidance and care. The conversation felt like a healing song. Later, the group toured museums and markets. She found a scarf in colors of sunrise. It reminded her of hope reclaimed through practice. She bought it as a gentle promise to herself. Transformation felt wearable and real. In the afternoon, she journaled on a shaded bench. She wrote about grief becoming gratitude with time. She wrote about resilience, learned one beat at a time. She wrote about new beginnings written in dance. Her words sounded strong and clear. Evening returned with soft music in the air. She danced with friends, lighter than before. The instructor's presence felt steady, not rushed. Connection blossomed with patient, simple steps. She sensed a future shaped by kindness. When the lights dimmed, she looked up at the sky. Stars gathered like blessings over the city. She placed a hand on the charm by her heart. Purpose felt simple, loving, and bright. Soon, it would be time to return. Goodbyes were soft and full of gratitude. She hugged friends and family who felt like her own. The flight lifted through clouds and quiet thoughts. She watched the city fade into gentle distance. Home waited with new meaning and light. Back in Florida, the familiar streets looked changed, not because they moved, but because she had. She unpacked slowly, placing the charm near photos. Memories felt friendly, not heavy or sharp. Hope was now part of the furniture. The first week tested her fresh resolve. Old habits whispered, asking her to slow down. She answered by scheduling practice every morning. She kept the routine simple and peaceful. Consistency became a promise to herself. At the studio, she shared stories and smiles. Friends listened, laughed, and learned new steps. The instructor invited her to co-lead a beginner group. She felt surprise and a rising courage. Teaching sounded like a new beginning. There were challenges in guiding others gently. She forgot a cue and restarted with calm. She learned to break movements into clear pieces. Each small success brought steady confidence back. The room filled with supportive energy. She noticed her days filling with purpose. Groceries, practice, calls, and simple meals flowed. She walked in the evenings and watched warm skies. Gratitude threaded through ordinary hours like gold. Life felt balanced and bright. One afternoon, the instructor stayed after class. He asked about her hopes for the seasons ahead. She spoke of community and kindness and growth. He spoke of projects that needed a steady partner. The future sounded like music. She helped organize a community dance night. Flyers promised welcome, laughter, and easy steps. People arrived, curious, and left smiling widely. The room held stories of change and courage. She felt the hum of shared hope. She opened the evening with a few words. Her voice was simple, honest, and clear. She spoke of resilience and patient learning. She honored her past with gentle gratitude. She invited everyone to begin again. They danced through basics and small flourishes. Children watched, couples swayed, and friends clapped. The instructor moved beside her with calm grace. Their partnership felt natural, warm, and kind. Possibility glowed in every corner. Later, they rested near the open doors. A soft breeze carried music into the night. He thanked her for shaping the event with care. She thanked him for steady faith in her growth. Their smiles spoke more than words. As the last song played, she closed her eyes. She felt courage rise like a tide within. She felt purpose settle gently on her shoulders. She felt life transformation shimmering in the air. New beginnings had become her home. When the lights dimmed, she looked around the room. Friends gathered to stack chairs and share hugs. The future felt wide and welcoming and bright. She slipped the courage charm into her pocket. Tomorrow, she would dance again.